New York in December was merciless. Wet winds slicing through worn jackets, the skyline glowing cold and distant above the slush-covered sidewalks. Alexei Morozov tightened his scarf as he stepped into the tiny cafe where he spent 10 hours a day pulling espresso shots for hurried strangers. He had come to America 3 years ago with a degree in computer science and big dreams. Dreams, however, did not pay rent. The cafe was half full when he arrived. He nodded at Peter, the tired manager with a perpetual coffee stain on his shirt, and slipped behind the counter. "Late again," Peter muttered, but not without a smile. Alexei forced a grin. "Train delays." Peter didn't press it. He knew Alexei was juggling more than one life. When his shift ended at midnight, Alexei didn't go home. Instead, he walked 5 blocks to a co-working space that stayed open all night. The code he had written over the past year now formed the skeleton of a platform he believed could revolutionize freelance job matching, but it still wasn't ready. By 3 in the morning, his eyes burned, and his fingers moved more from memory than intent. Yet he stayed. He had to finish it. Back in their tiny apartment in Queens, Emma stood by the window, staring out into the dark. She was wrapped in a blanket, her phone in hand, scrolling through pictures of vacations she couldn't afford and lives she couldn't live. They used to dream together. When they first met, Alexei's intensity had charmed her. The accent, the ambition, the promises whispered in Russian when he got emotional. But now, it felt like they lived in 2 different worlds. He was always working, always tired, always chasing a ghost. The apartment was cold, not just in temperature. They barely spoke anymore. When Alexei returned, the sun had begun to rise. Emma was awake, sitting at the kitchen table. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady. He dropped his backpack quietly and sat across from her. "I can't keep doing this," she said. "I'm 25, Alexei. I want a life. I want to go out, travel, not worry every time we get a utility bill. I want to be with someone who's here, not lost in some dream." "I'm building something," he said softly. "And I'm tired," she replied. "I've waited." "You keep promising me soon, but that word's become meaningless." He looked at her for a long time. There was no anger in his face, just quiet, heavy defeat. She packed that afternoon. No tears, no big fight. Just a quiet parting, as if they were both afraid to disturb the silence they had built between them. A week later, Alexei came home to an empty apartment. He stood in the doorway for a full minute, staring at the vacant shelf where her books had been. He didn't cry. He didn't rage. Instead, he sat down, opened his laptop, and got back to work. If she had stayed 1 more month, she might have seen the beginning of everything. But she didn't. And he no longer had anything left to lose. For the next few weeks, Alexei barely existed outside of his laptop screen. He quit the cafe job after one final 16-hour shift and used his last paycheck to extend his access to the co-working space. He canceled his phone plan, stopped buying real food, lived on vending machine snacks and black coffee. The app he had worked on for almost 3 years was finally taking shape. SkillSync, an AI-based freelancing platform that could automatically match specialists with high-quality projects based on verified performance metrics, not bloated resumes or keyword-stuffed profiles. He had no money for ads, no team, just code and stubbornness. And yet, late one night, something shifted. A freelance subreddit moderator allowed his post, a rare mercy. And within 24 hours, the site had its first 100 users. Within a week, it crossed 1,000. Developers and designers loved the clean interface and how fast they got paid. The platform began to ripple through Discord channels and private forums like wildfire. But while others celebrated, Alexei remained quiet, focused. Every bug, every crash, every poorly optimized query was a personal insult to him. He rarely spoke, except to Tony, his chain-smoking neighbor, a failed screenwriter who had taken a quiet interest in Alexei's silent war against poverty. "You look like someone who hasn't slept in a week," Tony said one night, handing him a bag of takeout. "You're gonna die skinny and brilliant." "Better than dying invisible," Alexei muttered. Tony chuckled and sat beside him, watching lines of code scroll across the screen. "Whatever you're building, it feels like it matters." Elsewhere, Emma was trying to find what she thought she had lost. She now dated Mark, a real estate agent with a Lexus and expensive haircuts. He took her to rooftop restaurants, posted selfies with her on yachts, and spoke with certainty about things like hedge funds and gym routines. But something inside her remained hollow. One night, while scrolling through her feed, she paused on a headline. "This Russian-American dev just changed the freelance game. Meet the creator of SkillSync. Her heart sank. The photo showed Alexei in a crisp black t-shirt, arms crossed, a serious but calm expression on his face. Behind him, a team of 6, whiteboards filled with diagrams, laptops everywhere. She read the article twice. A paragraph stood out. "I had nothing left," Morozov says. "No money, no connections, no safety net. Just an idea, and the knowledge that if I failed, I'd vanish. So I didn't fail." She closed the article and sat back in silence. Something burned inside her, low and uncomfortable. She wasn't sure if it was regret, anger, or both. Meanwhile, Alexei was facing his own test. SkillSync's backend was on the verge of collapse. Server costs had skyrocketed. He was holding it all together with digital duct tape. That's when he got an email. From Michael Davenport, Horizon Ventures. Subject: "We need to talk. Huge potential." Alexei stared at the message for 10 minutes before replying. They scheduled a call. Michael, mid-40s, sharp, precise, didn't waste time. "You built this solo?" "Yes." "Users are growing. Your tech is smarter than anything we've seen in this niche. But you need infrastructure, legal support, funding." "I know. I'm offering $1 million in seed capital for 15%. Alexei leaned back in his chair. This was the moment he had imagined in every fantasy. Every late-night hallucination fueled by hunger and resentment. He didn't hesitate. Deal. The next day, he signed the contract. A week later, the money hit his account. Not imaginary numbers, real solid funds. He moved out of the crumbling apartment and into a small but modern loft in San Francisco. Hired his first 3 engineers. Registered the company properly. Built a legal firewall around his code. And for the first time in his adult life, he slept for 10 hours without interruption. But he didn't celebrate. Instead, he returned to work. Sharper, faster, more focused. He knew this was only the beginning. In San Francisco, everything moved faster. The air was thinner, colder, cleaner. The city buzzed with silent calculations. Venture capital meetings over kale smoothies. App pitches in coffee shops where a single espresso cost more than Alexei once spent on groceries in a week. But he wasn't intimidated. He arrived in the city with a single backpack and a burning vision. With the $1 million seed from Horizon Ventures, Alexei hired a lean team of engineers, all freelancers he had connected with through SkillSync itself. There was May, a machine learning expert from Seattle, Raj, a back-end genius who wrote code like poetry, and Chloe, a UX designer whose intuition seemed to anticipate the user's needs before they even clicked. They worked out of a repurposed garage near Mission District, with bare brick walls and high-speed internet. The table was a door laid across 2 sawhorses. The espresso machine was second-hand, but there was energy in the room. Real, palpable belief. Within 2 months, SkillSync's user base tripled, then doubled again. Thousands of freelancers poured in. Coders from Mumbai, translators from Buenos Aires, marketers from Lagos. Projects flowed like a river. Clients were thrilled by how fast they were matched with vetted talent. Tech blogs took notice. Articles with headlines like "AI plus freelance equals SkillSync's quiet revolution" began appearing. Then came the podcasts, the panel invites, the interviews. Alexei stayed mostly behind the scenes, declining appearances unless absolutely necessary. Fame didn't interest him. Progress did. But his silence only fueled the myth. One morning, Chloe knocked lightly on his office door. A corner desk half hidden behind server boxes and blueprints. "There's a guy from Forbes waiting on Zoom. He says he's featuring you in their next 20 Innovators Under 30 issue." Alexei raised an eyebrow. "I'm 27. "Then you've got 3 years to keep innovating." He smiled for the first time in days. The interview was short, polished. The journalist asked the usual questions, but paused when Alexei said, "I didn't build this to be famous. I built it so people like me didn't have to beg for jobs they were overqualified for." In Queens, Emma sat on her friend Sarah's couch, watching the interview replay on her phone. She hadn't told anyone she knew Alexei. It felt distant now, like a blurry chapter in a book she never finished reading. But the ache in her stomach when she saw his face was sharp and fresh. He looked different, not in the obvious ways. Same eyes, same serious tone, but in how he carried himself. Confident, steady. "Who's that?" Sarah asked, glancing over. Emma hesitated. "Just some tech guy. Built some freelance thing." Sarah nodded. "Cute." Emma said nothing. The room felt suddenly too warm. She set her phone down, but the sound of his voice lingered in her head like a song you can't shake. Back in San Francisco, something shifted. It started with a gift box. A sleek, overpriced subscription box full of artisanal snacks and eco-luxury candles, addressed to A. Morozov. There was no note, but Alexei didn't need one. The name on the shipping label read E. Stone. He stared at it for a while, then left it on the counter. Chloe noticed. Old friend? Alexei didn't look up. Old life. That night he received a message. Hey, I saw your interview. Just wanted to say congratulations. You did it. He read it 3 times. No emojis, no smiley faces, just 5 plain sentences. He typed a reply. Thank you. Hope you're doing well. He didn't send it for a full hour, but eventually he pressed send. She responded an hour later. Would be nice to catch up sometime. Coffee, maybe? Alexei leaned back in his chair. Outside, the street lamps flickered like distant stars. He closed the laptop. 3 days later, they met in a quiet cafe on Valencia Street. Emma arrived early. She looked the same, but different. Hair lighter, makeup more subtle, clothes expensive but tasteful. When Alexei walked in, he wore a simple jacket and jeans. No watch, no symbols of wealth. They greeted each other with an awkward hug, like old colleagues, not former lovers. You look good, she said. So do you. The small talk stretched thin quickly. She fidgeted with her cup. I read that you're expanding to Europe? He nodded. Germany first, then the Nordics. There was a pause. I've been thinking a lot about everything, she said. About us. He waited. I wasn't patient. I know that now. And I regret it. Alexei didn't speak right away. He studied her. Not just her face, her eyes, her posture, her words. Finally, he said, You left when everything was uncertain. Now you're here because things are certain. That's not fair. No, he said gently. It's just honest. She looked down. I'm not angry, he added. I just don't live in the past anymore. Silence fell between them, softer than the first. When they stood to leave, she said, Good luck, Alexei. He gave a small smile. You too, Emma. And just like that, they went separate ways again, this time with no illusions. Autumn came early to San Francisco. The wind had a sharper edge, the fog rolled in faster. But inside the new SkillSync headquarters, a bright, minimalist office in Soma with full-height windows and matte black furniture, things burned with momentum. The platform had passed 1 million users. Alexei barely registered the number. Success had changed his surroundings. The office, the team, the way people looked at him in meetings, but not his rhythm. He still arrived before dawn and left after midnight. Still pushed code updates himself. Still answered bug reports at 3 in the morning. But for the first time, he wasn't alone. Chloe had become more than a colleague. She never announced her importance. It just happened. Over late-night brainstorms. Over Thai takeout boxes left half-eaten beside whiteboards. Over quiet jokes during investor calls. She had a calm presence, observant, intuitive, and honest. Do you ever slow down? She asked one night as they walked out of the office, both holding takeaway coffees. I tried once, Alexei replied. Didn't like it. She laughed. You should try again. You might be surprised. He looked at her then, really looked, and felt a rare warmth. Something he hadn't allowed himself in a long time. The next morning he received another message from Emma. Hey, I know what I said before. I meant it, but I also think we still have something real. Would you consider giving us another chance? He stared at the screen. Once those words would have sent his heart into freefall. Now, he felt only a quiet tightness in his chest. He didn't reply. Not right away. Instead, he left the office that evening and walked for almost 2 hours through the Mission, his thoughts louder than the traffic. He ended up outside a small bookstore. A window display featured a book titled, The Myth of Second Chances. He smiled at the irony. Emma waited 2 days. Then she sent another message. I'm not trying to use you. I miss you. The real you. Not the millionaire version. This time, Alexei replied. The real me was the one you left. She responded instantly. People change, Alexei. I did too. I've grown. I see things clearer now. Let's meet again. Please. They met in a rooftop bar overlooking the Bay Bridge. Emma had chosen it. Elegant, quiet, and designed to impress. She wore a navy dress and gold earrings that caught the last light of the sun. Alexei wore black jeans, a plain white shirt, and an expression that gave away nothing. She smiled when she saw him. You came. You asked. She studied him for a moment. I know this might sound crazy, but I haven't stopped thinking about you. You stopped being with me. I was scared, she said quickly. We were drowning. I felt like I was dying in that apartment. You were disappearing into a machine. I didn't know what to do. You walked away. I did. Her voice cracked. But I never stopped caring. Alexei sipped his drink. He felt the old emotions, pain, longing, memory, stir at the edges, but they no longer ran the show. You cared, he said, but not enough. She blinked. That hurt more than anger would have. I'm not bitter, he added, but I'm not who I was, and I'm not sure what you want, me or the version of me you see in the news. I want both, she whispered. He looked at her gently. I don't. The next week was a whirlwind. A high-profile client, a global consulting firm, launched a surprise audit of SkillSync after a competitor spread rumors about algorithmic favoritism. Social media exploded. Blogs speculated. Investors grew nervous. The team huddled for 3 days straight. No one left the office. Alexei slept in a beanbag chair. Chloe lived on instant ramen and espresso. By the 4th day, they had not only disproved the rumors, they exposed a coordinated smear campaign tied to the competitor's ex-employee. It was Chloe who found the smoking gun in the logs. Check this redirect string, she said at 3:17 a.m., eyes bloodshot, hands trembling. Alexei stared at the line of code, then smiled. You just saved us. She blinked slowly. Again? He laughed. Again. The next morning, headlines changed. SkillSync survives smear attack, emerges stronger. CEO Morozov credits, exceptional team for rapid response. In interviews, Alexei named everyone on the team. When asked about leadership secrets, he said, trust the people who stay in the storm. That night, he and Chloe sat on the office rooftop, watching fog swallow the city lights. She sipped tea in silence, then said softly, Is it weird that I'm proud of you? He smiled. You helped build it. But I'm still proud. Of you. He looked at her. I'm proud of you too. There was a pause. Then, without fanfare, without drama, he reached for her hand. She let him. No words were needed. Meanwhile, Emma sat in her apartment, a clean, modern space with curated art and soft jazz echoing from a smart speaker. She watched the same interview as before. Same man. Different eyes. She turned off the TV, stared into the dark, and whispered, I didn't know how strong you'd become. Then silence. Autumn deepened. Rain swept the streets of San Francisco like a cleansing ritual, washing away summer's dust and careless optimism. Inside the SkillSync building, however, the atmosphere was tense, not from weather, but from whispers of something darker. Alexei stared at his laptop screen in disbelief. The email had arrived at dawn, flagged by an automated system. Subject, security breach, level 1. Alert timestamp, 4:06 a.m. PST detected anomaly, unauthorized data extraction attempt. Targeted nodes, primary user clusters, EU, C regions. He sat frozen for a full minute. Then he called Raj, May, and Chloe. Within 20 minutes, the core team was assembled in the war room, a bare conference space with a massive screen, walls of whiteboards, and the stale scent of burnt coffee. This is not a probe, May said flatly. This is an extraction attempt. Sophisticated, too. They hit us from 7 different routes, Raj added. They used a variation of our own matching algorithm as camouflage. Someone studied our architecture closely. Chloe didn't speak. Her eyes were on the screen, fingers darting over her keyboard. Alexei paced. It's corporate espionage, he said. Has to be. No solo hacker gets this deep, not without help. We need to isolate the breach point, May said. We need to shut down access to EU servers for now, Chloe countered. It'll piss off users, but it's better than hemorrhaging data. Do it, Alexei said. For the next 36 hours, the office became a bunker. Food deliveries piled at the door. Showers were skipped. Raj passed out twice from exhaustion. May slept on the floor with a laptop on her chest. Chloe refused to leave her desk. By the second night, they had traced the attack origin. A shell company in Singapore tied to Helix One, a bloated competitor notorious for shady tactics and desperate acquisitions. They used one of our rejected beta testers, Chloe explained. Someone we flagged last year for suspicious behavior. I cross-referenced old logs. Any proof? Alexei asked. She clicked. Dozens of files appeared. Enough to bury them. The board wanted blood. 2 days later, Horizon Ventures called an emergency meeting. Alexei dialed in from the office, half asleep, but fully in control. Michael Davenport, the investor who gave him his first million, stared through the screen. You understand what this means, Alexei? I do. This is war. You want to sue? Alexei paused. No. I want to expose them. You'll make enemies. I already have them. Michael smiled. Good answer. The press exploded. SkillSync fights back. Catches rival red-handed in espionage attempt. Startup giant Helix One under fire for data breach scandal. Alexei Morozov refuses settlement, demands transparency. Stock in Helix One plummeted. Their CEO issued a rushed statement denying everything, but the damage was done. Alexei didn't celebrate. He simply got back to work. Later that week, after the dust had started to settle, Chloe found him on the rooftop again. The fog blurred the skyline, the city humming below like a distant engine. You haven't slept, she said. I've slept worse. She handed him a cup of tea. You know, she said, you could have taken the money, settled privately. No lawsuits, no headlines. I'm not building something just to sell it out. Chloe studied him. Then what are you building? Alexei exhaled slowly. Trust. She nodded. I think you are. They sat in silence for a long time. At some point, her hand found his. This time, it stayed. That weekend, Emma showed up at the SkillSync lobby. She wore jeans, a leather jacket, and no makeup, a look Alexei remembered from years ago. The receptionist recognized her name and hesitated, then called upstairs. Alexei agreed to come down. They met in the marble lobby, surrounded by buzzing interns and glass walls. I heard what happened, she said. I just wanted to say I'm glad you're okay. I am, he said, calm. You always were stronger than anyone realized. He smiled, politely, distantly. Not stronger, just stubborn. Emma hesitated. I know I shouldn't be here, but watching you stand up for your company like that, it reminded me of who you really are. I'm not that person anymore. She lowered her eyes. I know. I just needed to say goodbye properly. Alexei nodded. Goodbye, Emma. She turned to go, then stopped. She's good for you, you know. He didn't ask who. She walked away. He let her. That night, the office threw an impromptu celebration. Laughter echoed through the hallways. Pizza boxes stacked beside half-drunk bottles of champagne. Music played from someone's Bluetooth speaker. Alexei joined briefly, gave a small toast. To battles fought and people who don't run. Applause followed. Chloe touched his arm gently, silently. He turned to her, and this time, there was no hesitation. They left the party together. Outside, the city slept under layers of fog and light. Above them, the moon hung low and silver. Not quite whole, but enough. 6 months later, Alexei stood in the lobby of a glass tower in Berlin. Behind him, a massive digital screen displayed the SkillSync logo next to bold white letters. European launch event, powering the global freelance future. The world had changed, and so had he. SkillSync now operated in over 30 countries. The company had secured Series B funding, doubling its valuation. Major universities requested guest lectures from the man who rewrote freelance economics. A best-selling book mentioned him in a chapter titled Digital Kings. But titles meant little to Alexei. What mattered was walking into a cafe in Prague or Nairobi and seeing someone using his platform to find work, get paid, and live with dignity. What mattered was the quiet nod from a stranger who recognized him. Not from gossip, but from gratitude. He never forgot why he started. The Berlin Conference Center was buzzing. Investors, freelancers, journalists, even government officials had gathered. Alexei gave a keynote that was short, sharp, and human. "No one gave me permission to build this, so I stopped asking," he said. "Talent doesn't live in offices. It lives in cities and villages, on buses and borrowed Wi-Fi. We just gave it a door." The applause lasted minutes. Back in San Francisco, Chloe was watching the live stream with the team. She didn't travel with him this time. She was leading a redesign project for SkillSync Mobile 2.0. Still, her phone buzzed with a short message afterward. "You should have been here. Crowd was electric, but I missed one person." She smiled, typed back, "Come home. We've got work to do." After the event, Alexei skipped the after-party and walked alone through Berlin's cold evening streets. He stopped at a small bridge over the Spree River. Lights shimmered on the water like shattered coins. He pulled out his phone and typed a new message to himself, a habit he had developed in his loneliest days. Note to self: don't forget what silence feels like. Don't forget the hallway with no heat. Don't forget the way she left. But most of all, don't forget the ones who stayed. 3 days later, he flew home. The jet lag hit hard, but he still walked straight into the office, laptop under one arm, the other holding a coffee for Chloe. "You're a machine," she said, accepting the drink. "You keep me charged." She raised an eyebrow. "That's a new one." He smiled. "Been practicing." Their relationship had evolved slowly. There was no declaration, no dramatic kiss in the rain, just a steady rhythm. Shared dinners that turned into overnights, coffee cups beside toothbrushes, a spare key, a shared Spotify playlist. It was nothing like what he'd had with Emma, and that was the point. This wasn't based on dreams of what could be, but on the reality of what was. Solid, present, growing. Weeks later, Alexei received an anonymous email. Subject: just curious message. I still think about you. No signature, no address. He stared at it briefly, then moved it to the archive. The past had taught him well. He no longer owed it anything. On a cool Saturday morning, he stood at a community event SkillSync sponsored, a tech boot camp for underserved youth in Oakland. He watched a girl, no older than 12, configure her first basic Python app. She looked up at him with glowing eyes. "I want to build something too." "You will," he said. "Maybe something that changes the world." She beamed. Later, a local journalist asked, "What's next for you?" Alexei paused. "More doors," he replied. "More people walking through them." That evening, at home, Chloe cooked dinner while he fixed a loose shelf. They moved around each other in easy rhythm. No grand romance, just peace. After eating, they sat on the couch, legs tangled, the city lights outside flickering like a silent applause. Chloe rested her head on his shoulder. "Still chasing the ghost of the guy in Queens?" she teased. Alexei thought for a second. "He's not a ghost," he said. "Just a reminder." She squeezed his hand. "Then let him rest. You've made it." He looked around, not at the apartment, the skyline, or the balance in his account, but at her. And for the first time in years, he truly believed it. Somewhere in New York, in a small cafe where it all began, Peter, the old manager, poured coffee for a young programmer scribbling in a notebook. "You ever hear of SkillSync?" the kid asked. Peter chuckled. "Heard of it? I knew the guy before he had $1 to his name." The kid looked up, wide-eyed. "Was he always a genius?" Peter thought for a moment. "No, just someone who never gave up."